Hey everybody, this is Mandi, and today I'm going to be doing a birth book review for you from the Essential Home Birth Guide for Families Planning or Considering Birthing at Home, written by CPMs Jane E. Drichta and Jodalyn Owen. This book is, right off the bat, I'll tell you, it is a great book for anybody who is planning to have a child anywhere, at home or in the hospital or at a birth center. There's a great deal of valuable information in this book on decision making, from everything in your pregnancy, nutrition, through testing that's going to be done. It is just a great book all the way through newborn care, postpartum, and it was a quick read. It's 325 pages, and I've read it in probably 2 days. But not a quick read because there isn't a great deal of material. It's beautifully written. It's not just a bunch of information. I'd compare it to Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. It is very comparable in that it has everything that you really need to know about pregnancy and childbirth through postpartum. And it also has some birth stories at the end. So it's kind of a flip-flop of Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. It's also kind of like a spiritual midwifery. It's got the birth stories in the back and a great deal of information in the front. There's also an appendix that is very valuable too, because the Appendix A is some questions that you can use to interview your midwife when you're looking for a home birth midwife. Also, an index that you can refer to if you're looking for something specific. The first chapter is about the history of midwifery and home birth. It talks about how the community midwife kind of went from valued profession to dangerously educated witch. A lot of people, even nowadays, when they think about a midwife, they have no idea what one is or what she does or he does. They think of a midwife sort of as this superstitious character, when in reality, midwives nowadays, from CPMs to CNMs, all get a lot of education when it comes to what they learn in order to become a midwife. Some of them, even direct entry midwives, do some sort of apprenticeships. Midwifery combines handwork, headwork, and heartwork, and I love that. What they call the three-legged birthing stool of midwifery, and the kind of work that is included in midwifery. In the olden days, midwives used tools of nature and herbs and native plants to do her work, and she worked mostly under the dark of night. And in the days, especially during the medieval times, it was perceived that knowledge came from God and went directly to lords and noblemen and kings, and women were not a part of that equation. So midwives were kind of intimidating in that they had all of this knowledge and they were trusted to deliver children. In the 19th century, with the increased use of forceps during delivery and also chloroform in hospitals for anesthesia, it became a status symbol for the doctors, and the higher, more wealthy people women were using forceps, using chloroform. And during the Industrial Revolution, the upper class viewed midwives as dirty, and that perception carried into even today. I think things have changed somewhat, but even today, through the 20th centuries, with the advent of vacuum extractors and epidural and C-section, feminists called for these kind of interventions, and they called it empowering, so that women didn't have to feel pain during childbirth. And they wanted the spinal anesthesia. They wanted those medical interventions. They didn't perceive it, for the most part, as they didn't perceive childbirth as something that could be empowering to women. I do believe childbirth is a feminist issue, and as I've been reading Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering by Dr. Sarah J. Buckley, she talks about childbirth being a feminist issue, and how the medical profession, a lot of it has taken that power away from women, not given more power to women. So that's a very different perspective on childbirth, and I will talk about that more when I do the birth book review for Sarah Buckley's Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering. So during that time, the physicians fought for legislation against midwives And that is what has made it so difficult for midwives to practice in many states. If I were to have another child and want a home birth, it would be very difficult to get my insurance to cover a home birth, even if that were my choice. And if I had valid reasons, I would have to call and see if it would even work. And I had a great experience at the birth centers that I have gone to for my first two sons, but there are many things that I would look forward to in a home birth. And so that is just something that has happened with the medicalization of childbirth. Modern home birth during the 1960s and 70s, you can't mention modern home birth without talking about Ina May Gaskin and her work on the farm and in Summertown, Tennessee. And the first book that was released about that is Spiritual Midwifery. It is a time when women began to question the procedures in the hospital for childbirth and started to change their minds about how they wanted to give birth and started to view birth as an empowering experience. The percentage that this book gives for American babies born out of the hospital is 1%. Today, home birth moms are moms typically over 30, have formal education behind them, they're well educated, it makes economic sense for them. They've done a lot of research. A lot of people who choose home birth are moms that it makes economic sense for them to have a home birth. It's cheaper and in comparison with their options in the hospital. And I would say from experience that having my two at a freestanding birth center, which is much like a home birth, it was way more cost effective than the hospital. You don't have all the routine testing. You're not there for 2 to 3 days after birth. You're there for however many hours after birth until you feel comfortable enough to go home. So it just makes more sense. And I hope that insurance companies start to see that too and start to allow Americans to have the freedom, American women to have the freedom to give birth where they see fit. So this book covers a lot of great information. And as I said before, you don't have to be somebody who is planning on a home birth to read this book. It covers a great array of different subjects. How to choose a home birth provider is what it starts off with, but it also talks about nutrition. It examines the current medical model of care. It talks about informed consent, which I think is a great topic to cover, and I'm going to talk about it here. Informed consent is when, whether you're in the hospital, whether you're having a home birth with a midwife or a birth center birth with midwife, you have to be informed. So that means that your provider needs to talk to you about what tests and procedures are being done, and you must consent. You must grant consent before it is administered. So let's say that the doctor wants to break your bag of waters to get labor going. The doctor cannot just break your bag of waters without informing you and getting consent from you as to whether or not that is okay with you. Your provider does not have command or does not have complete power over your body and what decisions are going to be made during your birth. You have the right to say no, and you have to consent to the different procedures that are being done. And there are 4 parts of informed consent that this book talks about, and I'm going to go over those because I really think it's that important, and I'm so glad that it was covered in this book. Competency. It is the ability to understand the conversation that is happening. So you must understand why, to go back to the example, your doctor or your OB or your midwife wants to break your bag of waters. And you must receive information from your doctor or your midwife about why, what are the risks, what are the benefits of breaking your bag of waters, to keep with that example. You need to be informed of those risks and those benefits before it is done. And then comprehension. You must understand what has been told to you. You must understand the information. You must understand the risks and the benefits. And finally, voluntary consent. If you are coerced, if you are put under duress and under stress and made to feel like you must say yes and consent, then that consent is null and void. So if you are forced into a decision to start Pitocin, to have an episiotomy, to go into to have a C-section, for any of these things, to have your bag of water broken, or to be put under any kind of monitoring that you don't want to. If you are forced and you have said yes, but you feel like you have been coerced, then it is null and void, and they have not kept up with their contract. This is a law, and this is a right that you have. So a lot of midwives will give you handouts, and will have discussions with you, and will list those pros and cons for you on the different tests and things that are being done. So another model that is discussed in this book is the brains model. And this is a great model when you're deciding whether or not you want to get certain things done. It goes along with that informed consent. So let's say you are informed of the different reasons why a doctor or midwife wants to do something to you, do an internal check or something like that. You have this model that you can go back to, and it is benefits, risks, alternatives, instinct or intuition, now, never, nothing, safety, and satisfaction. So benefits. How will this procedure help my baby and our family? What are the risks for baby and mom? What are some other things we might try instead? What is your gut telling you? And what if we don't do the procedure right now? What if we never do it? And what if we do nothing? And safety and satisfaction. Will this procedure increase the safety and satisfaction of the birth for me and for my baby? So brains, if you remember that acronym and you can go back to it and refer to it, you can stop and ask these questions with this brains model. It's on page 76 of this book. I recommend you photocopy this, write it down. It is a great resource to have, so that when you're stuck, you can go to it and feel like you have a voice with this informed consent. This book also goes over creating a birth plan for home birth, or in the case of hospital transfer. And as I said before, this is a great resource for anybody who is giving birth. Another subject that this book talks about is creating your birth team, expanding your birth team, possibly hiring a doula, looking up doulas, seeing what doulas do for you. They could be a great benefit to you and your family during childbirth. Taking childbirth education classes. Yes, please take childbirth education classes. Childbirth education classes saved my life with my first son, helped me learn so much, helped me gear me towards what career I would eventually do, because I am a certified childbirth educator, and know what was going on with my body when it was going on during birth. It is the best decision. Actually, the birth center actually required me to take those childbirth ed classes, and I'm so glad that it did, because it totally changed my perspective on childbirth. It helped take away that fear that I had about childbirth that had been sort of ingrained through media and everything else growing up. And it just was an amazing, incredible experience. My childbirth education teacher ended up sitting in on my birth and kind of being a doula to me. So I am so grateful that I took those classes. And I recommend any mom, not just moms having a home birth, but moms who are going to have a hospital or freestanding birth center birth, take classes. You should know what's going on with you. Don't ever leave all of the power to the professionals that are working with you, because you have a right to know what's going on with you, and of course you want to know what's going on with you. It's not uncharted territory. It's not something that you shouldn't know. It's not something that you're a lay person and you shouldn't know what's going on with your body. You absolutely should know and need to know, because then your instincts comes into play during childbirth. And sometimes your gut feeling is incredibly important. It's part of that brains model, the I. Intuition is important. So yes, intuition, and you're armed with the information that you need to know about what's going on with your body, what's going on during birth, and then you can make those decisions and feel confident about those decisions.